When I visited Ram Das, the spiritual teacher who is now passed away, he lived on Maui. On his car I saw a bumper sticker which said, "I'd rather be here now." So as you go back into your regular daily life, hopefully the retreat does not come to an end, but remains with you and within you. The essence of the retreat is not the physical location, but a state of consciousness. Transcendent state of consciousness. Your task is to live, one could say, in both worlds or both dimensions at the same time. Occasionally you may lose yourself in the worldly, horizontal dimension, the doing realm, the thinking realm. And usually when that happens, you will notice dysfunctional, unpleasant inner states arising very quickly. Anxiety, fear, anger, irritation, resentment, trouble. And if you're in that state and then are disconnected again from the transcendent, the being dimension, the other dimension, then that's the unconscious state, and if there is no trouble, you will create it. That's what humans do. Troublemakers. Both on an individual level and collectively. If you want to learn about troublemaking collectively, and watch the news as much as possible, have the main focus of your attention in your daily life in the present moment. The rest of your attention, so that's the main focus. Here's this. The rest of your attention is where you want to go to. Whatever task you're engaged in has a certain purpose. The purpose is you want to finish the task, then it has achieved its purpose, and that's here. And that's in your peripheral, the peripheral vision of your consciousness. That's where you want to get to. And this is what you're doing in order to get there. And your main attention is not where you want to get, and in the meantime you're just doing it in order to get there. You can see how that already creates an inner stress. I'm here, but I want to be there. That's a normal way of living, is the main part of people's attention is there, but in the meantime they are here, where they don't really want to be. To rather be there, as shown in famous stickers, on bumper stickers on cars, which say something like, "I'd rather be fishing." When I visited Ram Das, the spiritual teacher who is now passed away, he lived on Maui. On his car I saw a bumper sticker which said, "I'd rather be here now." That's a good teaching on a bumper sticker. So your attention is, and this is a reversal almost of how humans usually live. It's the opposite. And so that is in itself already a shift in consciousness. And then, of course, you're also aware of the past. There's certain things that may have relevance in the present. That's fine. So peripherally, past and future. Usually future is the more important because you're moving towards that. And here's the central vision of present moment. In the present moment, you're either actively doing something, or you are more passively perceiving something. You're there as an observer, or you're just there, not actively doing, but simply perceiving. That could be when you travel back from here already. You might be sitting in a car. If you're driving, you're doing something. There it's particularly important to be present. Or you might be sitting on a plane, and that's a good opportunity for being you go into the witnessing mode. There's nothing particular to do unless you get out your laptop and start doing. That's fine. And sometimes situations arise that are problematic. That's quite normal in life. They are challenging rather than problematic. And then you face the challenge, you look at it, so to speak, not necessarily visually, but you give it attention. This is the challenge. Instead of unconscious reactivity, the challenge is your flight is cancelled. Oh. It's not one of the greatest challenges a human can have, but some people react as if it were. And when any challenge arises, is there anything I can do to respond to this situation? Or is that something where I simply have to say, well, for the time being, I accept the way it is, because right now there's nothing I can do. I heard, for example, at some airports they're so busy, not sufficiently staffed people, when the plane lands, they're still trapped on the plane for 2 or 3 hours. It has happened in Toronto and other places. That's a good opportunity for surrender. Some people can't do that. They start screaming and shouting. Does no particular purpose, but they can't help it. It happens to them. So always the question is this an opportunity for surrender, or is action called for? That is a practice to get used to until it becomes second nature, to have your attention in the present moment rather than elsewhere. And it usually implies you are aware of your surroundings. That's inseparable from being in the present through your senses. a more alert human being than a normal human being, but an alertness in which there is no tension. Often alertness in a human is associated with being tense. But there's an alertness without tension, but it's not enough to be just aware of your sense perceptions. That's a good thing. It also can help you to avoid dangerous situations that otherwise you just stumble into and you don't know how you got there. You're more alert of your surroundings. You see how animals in that sense are very alert, because if they are not, they get eaten by other animals. So many animals have this incredible alertness, not the same as the human alertness, but it is an alert awareness of their surroundings that many humans don't have. They walk in the street and they're not really there in their mind thinking about all kinds of things except where they are, and so they're not here. Whereas the bird sitting on a branch, or the deer that's stepping out of the forest, and there's a field, and the deer stops for a moment, and the ears, they're very huge ears, they go. And it can hear probably 100 times better than the human. Or a bird on a branch sitting, it goes like this. And then suddenly it goes. And of course there's no decision making involved. When a bird suddenly flies off, it did not think, I'm now going to fly off this branch and I'm going to go over there. It just happens. There's a flow to life. There's no mind. There is a consciousness there, but there's no conceptualization at all. But when an animal rests, an animal also rests completely. It is completely at rest. Not thinking about my life. I have to figure something out. What's the purpose of it all? The mother bird is taking the little chick and going, and then it will, oh no, you can't fly like that, you have to do this.
I guess just to go along with questions about boys, my daughter's 17 years old. There are times when, and many times recently, when she does not want to follow my direction, you know. How do I stay present when she's doing, pulling?
So she's 17.
She's 17.
So you've only got a few more months of control over her, and then you have to let go.
Well, she's been at this for a while.
So then the shift then as your children grow older, of course, the younger they are, the more you need to in some cases control what they do, because they might do something to hurt themselves, like don't play with fire, don't walk on a high wall because you might fall off. So those things, and then gradually the parent needs to learn to allow a bit more, always a bit more freedom, and a bit more just give guidance rather than control. Some parents find it hard to shift from exerting control as they grow older and giving guidance. And as in teenagers especially, they resent, as you know and everybody knows, they resent being told what to do, because they're beginning to be independent adults.
Well, she knows everything.
Yes, of course. Yes. So there's as much learning for you as there is for her in this situation. For you, it's to do with continuing to give guidance without giving the impression that you're trying to control what she does. And if guidance is not received, no matter whether it's given but it's not received, then you need to accept that, especially as soon she will be reaching 18. Then and then compassion comes in. You continue to help her as much as you can, offer help or guidance, realizing that she now has she is autonomous now and will decide what to do on her own, and she will make mistakes, hopefully, because if she doesn't, she's not going to grow. She will make mistakes, and you may see it and she won't. And ultimately, they're not really mistakes, because they're all part of one's growth process and becoming eventually conscious. Often mistakes, if they are leading to suffering, and then can lead to awakening. And then retrospectively, they're not mistakes. If a mistake leads to awakening, it's not a mistake. Eventually, so it's a letting go internally, compassionate letting go, like think of the image of a nest, and the mother bird is taking the little chick and going, and then it'll, oh no, you can't fly like that, you have to do this. But birds have learned to fly for 1 million years and more without the mother bird telling them what to do. They'll learn, so it's trusting in the movement of life and realizing how that so-called mistakes are an important part of our growth. And that's, we had somebody else before, we talked about allowing them to do that. So it's think of the image, and that will help you to be, your associated question was to do with patience or presence. This will help you, the bird, you let the bird fly off. And the flight at first may not be smooth, and they may have a hard landing. And then you just watch, and you know that's fine. Do as much as you can. Patience is not quite the same as presence. In presence, the whole idea or concept of patience disappears. When you're present and somebody says, oh, you're so patient, you say, patient? I didn't know I was patient. Patient is something that you're trying to do. You really. I'm trying to be patient here. Here is the key word. I'm trying to be patient here. So the patience is something you're kind of holding back. I'm very patient with you. But in presence, really, you're not thinking of yourself as patient at all. It doesn't come into it really anymore at all. You're just present with what is. And as I said, if somebody called you patient, you'd say, what does that mean? I'm not patient at all. It's like forgiveness also. In presence, forgiveness happens naturally, and so you don't need to make a big deal and say, I'm trying to forgive that person. I had, again, in my life, I had for many years resentment towards my father until I finally woke up. And then the resentment disappeared and my relationship with him changed completely. There was suddenly love. And for until the age of 29, I had enormous amount of resentment. I didn't realize, of course, that he did what he did because of his programming. He had an enormous amount of anger in him that comes from his childhood, and again I could explain why, but it's not necessary. It comes from his childhood and the way in which he interpreted his childhood, what his mother did to him, not actually, rather how he interpreted her motivation. He was the seventh child, the youngest, and then his father died when he was only 14, and then the family didn't have enough money to have all the children at school, at high school, so two of his sisters were kept at school and he was taken out of school because he didn't have enough money. And he had to become an apprentice in some store, not supermarket, they didn't have supermarkets then, but some store where he had to make deliveries to big houses, and that enormous anger started to come up in him during all that time, what my mother did to me, what they did to me, and that never really left him. So living with him, the anger was usually not directed to me, but it was directed to my mother always. And living there was like living with an unexploded bomb. It could go off at any moment. Whenever he was there, it was like a powder keg. Any moment it could go off. One wrong word by my mum, and my mum was very good at saying the wrong word.
Of course.
That was he couldn't help that. And as I then disidentified from that, in his later years, there was a considerable degree of awareness coming in. Some of remnants of that anger remained, but far less than before. And he read The Power of Now a few years before he died, and it was meaningful to him. And there was quite a bit, in some areas of his life he was virtually enlightened, and in other areas there were still big pockets of unconsciousness. But compared to what he was before, there was an enormous shift. And it has, I'm sure, something to do with the shift that happened in me towards him. So there was no longer anything to forgive.
I see.
That's the beauty of it. And it was all his ego was huge. So I learned about ego before I even knew the word ego. Throughout all my childhood, I learned about how the ego behaves and what it does through observation, without knowing that was ego. But I saw the dysfunction, normal dysfunction in relationships. It's all fine. Trust, compassion, letting go, and then life will do the rest.
Well, thank you very much.
So let us be still an instant and forget all things we ever learned, all thoughts we had, and every preconception that we hold of what things mean and what their purpose is. Well, today I'd like to read to you and comment on some brief quotes from A Course in Miracles. A few years ago I gave a talk about the Course in Miracles in a little bit more detail. The Course in Miracles, I don't know if you have read it or done it or heard of it. It's a channeled book, first channeled in the 60s, later part of the 60s, and first published in probably 76. And it's been around since then, become a kind of spiritual classic. It's one of the few channeled books that are deep and quite profound. It's not for everybody, definitely. It uses Christian terminology, but reinterprets Christianity so that it becomes a very deep teaching. Perhaps that's the original teaching of Jesus. It was channeled by a psychologist, clinical psychologist at Columbia University in New York. So she didn't understand the content very well, having little spiritual background, so it was dictated to her by an inner voice. So the Christian terminology is helpful to some people and a hindrance for others. It uses this old-fashioned language with exclusively masculine pronouns and God the Father, and talking about God as He. That may be considered a limitation, but you can look beyond that. Today I would like to, instead of using the entire course here, which is a big book, I don't even have it right here. This book was published, just a little volume here of quotes from the Course in Miracles, and it's called Accept This Gift, Selections from a Course in Miracles. Foreword by Marian Williamson, published by Tarcher Cornerstone Editions. And the quotes are quite very short and beautiful, and they selected also quotes that are relatively neutral in their language, so you don't get a lot of the masculine pronouns and old-fashioned terminology. So what I will do today is just select a few of these very brief quotes and comment on them. This does not mean I'm simplifying the Course in Miracles or reducing it to something simple. With a spiritual text, it's very different from other kinds of texts. It does not work in a cumulative sense, so that the truth can be contained, the entire truth can be contained in one sentence. So it operates in the dimension of depth, not extension. Although, of course, paradoxically, the Course in Miracles contains lessons. One part is the text, the other part is the lessons, 365 lessons, one for each day of the year. So it gives you time in that sense, but it gives you time because you need time to remove time from your mind, so to speak. That's quite a paradox. Some of the Course in Miracle writings are quite poetic. They're almost like little poems. And maybe I'll start with one of those little almost poems. They're quite beautiful. And perhaps the most profound one that I will start with comes towards the end of the Course, which is, if somebody does the course 360, so it would be towards the end of the year of doing the course. This is the longest quote in our session today. So it's actually a poem that I will read to you. And I think you will appreciate the beauty of it, and then I will comment on the meaning. In case you need it, you probably don't. I don't know yet if I'm going to read it all at once, or I'll read parts first and then comment on each part. It's about a couple of pages. Well, short pages. There will come a time when images have all gone by, and you will see you know not what you are. It is to this unsealed and open mind that truth returns, unhindered and unbound. Where concepts of the self have been laid by, is truth revealed exactly as it is. That's the first paragraph, first of the poem. Let me just briefly comment. There will come a time when images have all gone by, and you will see you know not what you are. It is to this unsealed and open mind that truth returns, unhindered and unbound. Where concepts of the self have been laid by, its truth revealed exactly as it is. Images have all gone by, and you will see you know not what you are. Now, what does that mean? Somewhere else in the Course, it uses the ancient expression, know thyself, as one of the main purposes of the Course is to teach you to know yourself, know thyself. Don't know if I can find it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. How does that relate to a time will come when you will realize that you know not what you are? How can you know yourself? And then it says, time will come when you, as a positive thing, that you know not what you are. Well, that's easily explained. To know yourself, you have to let go of concepts about yourself. And when you let go of concepts, mentally held concepts about yourself, then you no longer know who or what you are on the level of concept. And when you have then let go of concepts, where concepts of the self have been laid by, let go of, is truth revealed exactly as it is. So when you surrender mental concepts about who you are, which is stories, narratives, interpretations, then another dimension of knowing arises, which is deeper or higher. It doesn't matter what term you use, than concepts. And instead of conceptual knowledge, which you let go of, a deeper dimension of knowing arises. And in that deeper dimension of knowing that is not conceptual, it's not based on thinking, the truth of who you are reveals itself. That's the essence of all, whether you look at Indian or Hindu teachings, Buddhist teachings, mystical Christianity, it's all the same. Sufism. Now let's carry on with this poem on the same theme. I call it poem, it's just part of the text. Let us be still an instant and forget all things we ever learned, all thoughts we had, and every preconception that we hold of what things mean and what their purpose is. Let us remember not our own ideas of what the world is for. We do not know. Let every image held of everyone be loosened from our minds and swept away. Be innocent of judgment, unaware of any thoughts of evil or of good that ever crossed your mind of anyone. Now do you know him not, but you are free to learn of him and learn of him anew, him being any other person. So this section here points to the clarity that comes, the deep realization that comes when you let go of thinking, basically. So let us be still an instant and forget all things we ever learned, all thoughts we had, and every preconception that we hold of what things mean and what their purpose is. Let every image held of everyone be loosened from our minds and swept away. So it's not only about ourselves, letting go of self-concepts, it's also about letting go of concepts that we hold of other people, judgments, concepts, conceptualization. So meeting another person without any concepts. So you let go of the conceptual knowing so that a deeper knowing arises. Be innocent of judgment, it says. Judgment is basically interpreting things through thinking. Every judgment is a thought. Jesus also said, do not judge. So be unaware of any thoughts of evil or of good that ever crossed your mind of anyone. Now do you know him not? Once you've let go, you don't know him or her. Here we have the masculine pronouns. But you are free to learn of him and learn of him anew. What are you learning? You're learning about the deeper reality of the human being, of who he or she is in their essence, and then knowing yourself in the same way. Now it continues, only be quiet. You will need no rule but this, to let your practicing today lift you above the thinking of the world and free your vision from the body's eyes. Only be still and listen. Simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. All concepts you have learned about the world. All images you hold about yourself. I have, as you may remember, occasionally mentioned the symbolism of the cross. Well, one of them, the cross, the intersection of the vertical and horizontal dimension. And that's a useful reminder for your life, so that at any time you don't lose your connectedness with the vertical dimension, which opens up in the present moment, which we could call the being dimension. In that vertical dimension, you are already whole, complete. There's nothing to add in because that is your essence, the timeless essence of who you are, and that is connected to the source of all life, connected eternally to the source. It is an emanation of the source, whatever name you want to give to what I now call the source, the origin. So that is your connectedness to source, and that is your oneness with the source. Only be found in the vertical dimension, which we can also call the being dimension. It opens up when you become present. There is no matter how long, cessation of the stream of thinking, and a space opens up, an inner spaciousness. And in that, you realize the depth of who you are, but there is no conceptual realization. There is only a silent knowing, a silent realization of the being that you are, the presence that you are. Vertical. The horizontal dimension is the dimension, we could call it the doing. It includes thinking, because thinking is a kind of doing also. So the moment you move into thinking, you're in the horizontal dimension. And then doing, also thinking, then becomes doing. You do something. In order to do something, immediately time needs to come in. You need time. Even whatever you do, you need time. Even to make a cup of tea, you need time to make it. Any doing, thinking also requires time. So time comes in. That's part of the horizontal dimension, and you need time there. Time is has the two polarities. The time, it on the one hand, it enables you to grow, it enables you to evolve here in this dimension, but to acquire new knowledge, new experiences, to try things out. And as a person, you can become more mature, you can acquire more knowledge. But if there's a continuous lack of vertical, then the limitations of the person will increase as the older you get. You realize that whatever you achieve on the horizontal dimension has enormous limitations, and these are ultimately never fulfilling. But it's not to be denied. You need you need the horizontal also, and you need to give it. You need to honor it. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm not going to be bothered with anything anymore, because it's all future." No, nothing. Just leave me alone. I just want the vertical. Then the horizontal dimension will make demands upon you, and if you don't challenge yourself, it will challenge you. And even if you challenge yourself, it will still challenge you. So that's the these dimensions. The art of living is to bring the two together, so that when you're engaged in thinking and doing, you don't completely lose yourself in the thinking and doing. And then you give an importance to the world, an absolute importance to the things of the world, including your possessions and your achievements, and whatever it may be, the economic situation. You give an excessive importance to the things of this world, and then this world will consume you, and you will lose yourself in it. And that's a terrible fate. There's a difference between honoring the things of this world and giving it, the things of this world, an absolute importance that they don't have. They have a relative importance. So you need to deal with it, but at the same time know that there is something more fundamental. It doesn't exclude that, but there's something more fundamental, and that is the being, which is the consciousness of you, but that you is not the person. So the great thing about things going wrong on the horizontal dimension, which happens from time to time, you might have noticed, in your personal life or in the collective, things go, no matter how careful you are, no matter how many insurance policies you have and pension plans, there's nothing wrong with these things. But no matter what, the world will challenge you, and you will notice there's something unstable about the world. There's something unstable about people. You trust in this person or in that person, and then suddenly they turn into somebody else. There's no matter what, wherever you go, you find an element, small and very often big, an element of instability. And and then after a while, when that's all you know, you become distrustful of the world and of people too, because you never know what they're going to do next, because you've trusted so many men or women, and then say, I don't want to know of men, or whether it's men or women, doesn't matter. I've trusted them and they always disappoint me. As the Buddha already recognized, every situation and every person, if that's all you know, and if that you give an absolute importance to it, and you demand that it should satisfy you or make you happy, whether it's a person or situation, will disappoint you, disillusioned. And then you become, that's a wonderful word. I'm disillusioned. Well, that must be a good thing, because it's the end of an illusion. I'm so disillusioned with this world and people. And then people formulate weird theories on the basis of that about the world, and they can tell you how bad it all is. So that's important to remember. The horizontal dimension, whatever happens here in this world, will let you down. If you give it an absolute importance, it'll let you down. And if you don't give it an absolute importance, because you are connected to the vertical, out of which emanates, that is it's a continuous source of satisfaction of the beingness of you, then yes, the world may still let you down, but it doesn't matter very much anymore. It doesn't make you unhappy. You are quite okay with recognizing the limitations of the things of this world. And you don't become unhappy, and you don't judge people on the basis of behavior they manifest as part of their mental emotional conditioning. You don't confuse the mental emotional conditioning of a human being with who they essentially are. You can look beyond that dimension, because that is part of the horizontal, and you can look deeper. And that's a wonderful liberation, but that can only happen if you are connected to the vertical, if you're able to become still and present. It doesn't matter how long, but you find these inner spaces of Buddha's awareness, where thinking is replaced with awareness or presence. And then you look at a totally different way of looking at another human being through the veil of thinking. Even if you've accumulated a lot of psychological knowledge, when you look at another human being, the psychological knowledge, there might be a lot of truth in it, but it's very limited. All you're recognizing is the conditioning of that human being that makes up the person. And so you're looking at it through the veil of thinking. And then you let go of that, and then you look at a human being through awareness or presence. And there's no conceptualization. There's a deep knowing, and you can kind of penetrate into the essence of who they are. But only if it comes, that ability comes from your essence, and the essence is one, you and the other. And then comes the recognition of the other as one with who you are in your essence, because you emanate from the same source. So you're not one out here, but you're one down there. Then there are other things that you do. As you know, I often recommend when you get into your car, maybe you do that already, you just mentioned something about the car. When you close the door of your car, give yourself 30 seconds to just be present. Unless it's an emergency, then you should go to the hospital or wherever you're going. So give yourself 30 seconds, but it has to be done in the right way. You're not saying, okay, Eckhart says 30 seconds, and then you say, okay, here we go. You're just straining to get out of the 30 seconds. So it has to be focused on your breath, for example, that helps, or the inner body, the awareness of the inner body, and practice the being. So you bring a little bit of being into the doing. Later, at some point later, the two will merge completely. And then there are other moments when you can probably, things that you do frequently every day, there you can bring in awareness so that it's not a means to an end. And perhaps create a little gap, so have a number of gaps during the day, during a busy day. You could say, for example, whenever you wash your hands in the bathroom, that can be an absolute presence you come to your senses, feel the water, smell the soap, and that can be a present moment. Whatever, you can probably make a list of things that you do every day. If there's a staircase somewhere in your building, then walking up and down the stairs can be a wonderful opportunity for being present at every step. So it's not a means to an end anymore. So I would suggest make a list of things that you do every day or very often, and use these as to bring in spaces. So you have these very brief practices of bringing in spaces, and then even while you're engaged in the doing, there too you can see if you can, as we mentioned, the discussions that you have, sense the presence that you are while you're listening. Be alert. That you're actually then much more alert than you were in a normal state. It increases your intelligence, and it's an intelligence that's deeper than the IQ intelligence. That's something that I find in my life that arises, because I also practice that, although I don't have discussions that often, but sometimes we meet. And this alert listening, out of that, what I find often comes is questions. You ask questions. One of the most creative ways of participating in a discussion group is to ask questions. Other people, when they say something, the light of your awareness shines on it. Then a question arises, and another question. This is in the creative process of finding solutions and answers. This is often overlooked, especially when you're very much identified with your mind. Then the mind has certain preconceived notions and opinions and positions, and it'll just repeat those. So when somebody comes forward with an idea that's totally new, if you're very much identified with your mind, it could happen that you say, "Oh, no, that's not going to work." But with this, you develop the ability to listen. And the true listening means you are alert and still. That's true listening. It's not the auditory aspect is a very small one. You're alert and still. And you may find that you may not have the answers, but you begin to ask questions. And then the other person who perhaps brought forward an idea is then forced to reply, and it may drive him or her deeper to see where can we go with this. So one of the most creative things, and the very creative people in that kind of environment, they are the ones who ask the most questions. This is how the entire philosophy of Socrates developed, because it's called the Socratic method, which is somebody comes and asks Socrates a question, but he has questions to him, and so he goes from one question to another and another. When you read Plato's account of Socrates, I don't think Plato completely understood what Socrates was doing. Plato thought that he already knew the answer, but I don't think that's the case, because Socrates said, "I'm the only one who knows that he knows nothing," which means he was comfortable with the state of not knowing that I mentioned earlier. And out of that state of not knowing, often questions arise. And in this question, then the answers suddenly come. It's a joint endeavor. The answer may not even necessarily come through you, but you ask the right questions, and then the group suddenly comes up with an answer. And that is also spiritual practice, and it can be totally incorporated into what you're doing. So both setting aside little spaces when you become present during the day, and also in many areas, maybe the hardest is being on the computer screen, to be present there. But there you could practice as much as possible, have a little reminder next to the laptop, whatever it is, and have a little reminder to, for example, to be in your body, have inner body awareness, because computer draws your attention out. You go. It actually depletes you after a few hours. It depletes you of energy. It flows out. It absorbs, because all your focus is on there, and so it's doubly important to. You may not sustain it continuously, but have a little reminder, so even while you are writing something or reading something, and this is something that you may not succeed immediately in this practice, but it is possible to be aware of your body, have some background awareness in the energy field of the inner body, and then you sit and you can still deal with whatever it is you're dealing with.
One aspect of the insanity of this world is we assume infinite growth on a finite planet. We are coming up against the limitations of that assumption, how do you suggest we accept the suffering that that will entail?
Thank you. Okay. That was not the answer, that was just sound. The structures that are in place, the economic structures now are a reflection of a certain state of consciousness, collective state of consciousness in humans, which is largely the egoic state. The ego needs always more because the ego lives in a state of constant insufficiency, a constant sense of neediness and lack. It does not feel it has arrived, it needs more. So that's the unconscious urge. So if that's in the individual human, and if that mind structure is in millions of individual humans, then these individual humans create these external structures, organizations, and so on, that reflect the original mind setting. So the companies that the economy needs to grow, and it cannot, nothing can grow indefinitely. It's just not, everything grows and then it shrinks or dissolves and then something new arises. That is a constant cycle. And yes, of course, when something that is ego-created dissolves, it leads to suffering. That's inevitable. And it is this very suffering, I don't know if that's a politically correct statement, but I'll say it anyway, because perhaps the political statement is nobody should have to suffer. It's a travesty that humans suffer. Nobody should die. Death is a travesty. I'm against it. Of course I'm against suffering. Yes, humans shouldn't suffer. It's just, that's not the reality of it. Humans create out of the unconsciousness. They bring about their own suffering, both on a personal level, and if you amplify that, on a collective level. Now, if on a personal level, you, out of the egoic unconsciousness, you embark on certain courses of action that reflect the egoic unconsciousness, you will encounter self-created suffering. You make others suffer around you, and they will make you suffer. You encounter the unconsciousness and the suffering that's generated by unconsciousness as a person. And the same applies to the collective. When the collective no longer works because it's the very foundation was delusional, then it creates suffering in humans. But as in the individual, the suffering, although it is created through unconsciousness, the redeeming feature behind suffering is that it's the very suffering that was created by unconsciousness that has the effect, potentially, of awakening you and transporting you beyond ego. And when that happens on a larger scale, it still applies. So there will be suffering, humans will have to suffer, but ultimately, whether it's 1 million people who are suffering because a huge company has collapsed, there's always every one out of these 1 million individuals is one individual. There's your suffering. This one individual is suffering. And in the suffering of this one individual, there is a potential of awakening. But it is very helpful if as many people as possible come into contact with these teachings that show the possibility that is concealed behind suffering, and that suffering in a certain stage is inevitable as long as there is unconsciousness, and then the suffering itself has the potential of awakening you. And again, coming back to what we talked about earlier, the cross. The image of suffering is the cross is the image of suffering. the cross is also symbol for the divine. So it's the self-created suffering, both personal level and collective level, that is actually part of the evolutionary progress, the evolution of human consciousness. And one thing that is also good to remember is that we tend to regard every human being as completely autonomous entity. Here's the human and here's the rest of the world. Of course, the ego sees itself like that also. Here's me, the most interesting thing in the universe, and there's the rest of the universe. That's how the ego perceives me against the universe. That's the ego's perception. Of course, it's a misperception, and every human being is a temporary expression of the one evolving consciousness, a ray of light, so to speak, from the one source. And so every human being is an expression of that. There is the eternal consciousness, that is the eternal in you, is gradually awakening. And it awakens in many cases through the dream, an unpleasant dream. But that's a long story. Don't need to go. It may make sense to you just by giving you a little hint. There's a nightmare sometimes. My life had to become a nightmare before the awakening happened. If my life had not become a nightmare in my own mind, there would have been no awakening. So I'm very grateful that it became a nightmare. Because if you're in a nightmare, you don't want to carry on dreaming. You say, get me out of here. If you have a relatively pleasant dream with up and downs, I might as well stay here. I'm quite comfortable in this dream because here's another good meal waiting for me, and I'm going to eat this in my dream, and it tastes so good. I may be dreaming, but it tastes great. And then you're sick for a little while, but then there's something else to look for. It's not. So your question is, how do you cope, or how do you explain?
How do you accept the
yes.
suffering that awaits us?
Accept.
And one small piece, I'm old enough that I will escape a lot of it, but I think about my children who will live in a world in which there will be a lot more limits and limitations.
Yes, that may well be the case.
So how do I help them?
You help them by teaching them what acceptance really means, by making them more conscious, and you do that by being conscious yourself. And occasionally they might be open to hearing something that you say to them occasionally. Then they will be ready then, and they will be able to use the suffering. I mean, I've been. The first half of the 20th century was a dreadful nightmare for millions upon millions of humans. When the First and Second World War happened, genocide happened on an enormous, unimaginary scale. Insanity, often you can't even imagine the insanity of it. And you ask, will we have to go through something like this again? Maybe. Maybe yes. Teach them how to suffer, and by learning how to suffer, to go beyond suffering. That's what you can teach them. And then, so before you depart from this dimension, they will know, and then they are ready. That is a practice to get used to until it becomes second nature, to have your attention in the present moment rather than elsewhere. Have the main focus of your attention in your daily life in the present moment. The rest of your attention, so that's the main focus. Here's this. The rest of your attention is where you want to go to. Your, whatever task you're engaged in has a certain purpose. The purpose is you want to finish the task, then it has achieved its purpose, and that's here. And that's in your peripheral, the peripheral vision of your consciousness. That's where you want to get to. And this is what you're doing in order to get there. And your main attention is not where you want to get, and in the meantime you're just doing it in order to get there. You can see how that already creates an inner stress. I'm here, but I want to be there. That's the normal way of living, is the main part of people's attention is there, but in the meantime they are here, where they don't really want to be. To rather be there, as shown in famous stickers, on bumper stickers on cars, which say something like, "I'd rather be fishing." When I visited Ram Das, the spiritual teacher who is now passed away, he lived on Maui. On his car I saw a bumper sticker which said, "I'd rather be here now." That's a good teaching on a bumper sticker. So your attention is, and this is a reversal almost of how humans usually live. It's the opposite. And so that is in itself already a shift in consciousness. And then of course you're also aware of the past. There's certain things that may have relevance in the present. That's fine. So peripherally, past and future. Usually future is the more important because you're moving towards that. And here's the central vision of present moment. In the present moment, you're either actively doing something, or you are more passively perceiving something. You're there as an observer, or you're just there, not actively doing, but simply perceiving. That could be when you travel back from here already. You might be sitting in a car. If you're driving, you're doing something. There it's particularly important to be present. Or you might be sitting on a plane, and that's a good opportunity for you go into the witnessing mode. There's nothing particular to do unless you get out your laptop and start doing. That's fine. And sometimes situations arise that are problematic. That's quite normal in life. They are challenging rather than problematic. And then you face the challenge, you look at it, so to speak, not necessarily visually, but you give it attention, that this is the challenge. Instead of unconscious reactivity, the challenge is your flight is cancelled. It's not one of the greatest challenges a human can have, but some people react as if it were. And when any challenge arises, is there anything I can do to respond to this situation? Or is that something where I simply have to say, well, for the time being, and I accept the way it is, because right now there's nothing I can do. I heard, for example, at some airports they're so busy, not sufficiently staffed people, when the plane lands, they're still trapped on the plane for 2 or 3 hours. It has happened in Toronto and other places. That's a good opportunity for surrender. Some people can't do that. They start screaming and shouting. That does no particular purpose, but they can't help it. It happens to them. So always the question is this an opportunity for surrender, or is action called for? That is a practice to get used to until it becomes second nature, to have your attention in the present moment rather than elsewhere. And it usually implies you are aware of your surroundings. That's inseparable from being in the present, through your senses. A more alert human being than a normal human being, but an alertness in which there is no tension. Often alertness in a human is associated with being tense. But there's an alertness without tension. But it's not enough to be just aware of your sense perceptions. That's a good thing. It also can help you to avoid dangerous situations that otherwise you just stumble into and you don't know how you got there. You're more alert of your surroundings. You see how animals in that sense are very alert, because if they are not, they get eaten by other animals. So many animals have this incredible alertness, not the same as the human alertness, but it is an alert awareness of their surroundings that many humans don't have. They walk in the street, and they're not really there in their mind thinking about all kinds of things except where they are, and so they're not here. Whereas the bird sitting on a branch, or the deer that's stepping out of the forest, and there's a field, and the deer stops for a moment, and the ears, they're very huge ears, they go. And it can hear probably 100 times better than a human. Or a bird on a branch sitting, it goes like this, and then suddenly it goes. And of course there's no decision making involved when a bird suddenly flies off. It did not think, I'm now going to fly off this branch and I'm going to go over there. It just happens. There's a flow to life. There's no mind. There is a consciousness there, but there's no conceptualization at all. But when an animal rests, an animal also rests completely. It is completely at rest. Not thinking about my life. I have to figure something out. What's the purpose of it all? This is why it can be very healing to live with an animal. Yes, it can be quite a bit of work too, but it can be very healing to live with an animal, and and to have an animal presence in the house, dog, cat, usually. This unproblematic existence, except when the dog or cat are neurotic, which can happen, but there are reasons for that, usually connected to their early life, just like human childhood. When things go wrong in childhood, it leaves traces. So but usually dogs and cats' normal state is, unless they're hungry or want to go for a walk, they can be really rooted in being and joyful. The cat purrs, the dog's tail wags, and it's a joy just to see it. No problem with, no psychological problems, unless it's spent too much time with neurotic humans. It's a conscious practice. So an animal can bring you into the present moment. Just to look at an animal, it's in the present moment. An animal that lives with humans may not be quite as alert as an animal out in the wild, because it knows that the environment is relatively protected. Nevertheless, dogs are quite alert, and cats too. So you become, again, the center of your attention, always bring back into the present, because it's, first of all, because it's all there ever is. Well, that's a good reason. Because it's life itself. Your life situation, yes, it exists in time. There's a past and a future as far as your life situation is concerned, but it's not your life. I wrote about that a long time ago, but it's so important. People confuse their life situation with something more fundamental, more real, more immediate, deeper, which is called life. Life situation is circumstances and events in your life. And most of your life situation is experienced in your mind. And then life situation is relationships, work situation, financial situation, living situation, all kinds of often problematic situations. It's very rare that all of these situations are working smoothly and perfectly. Relationships, family, professional, work, financial, environment, living situation, health situation, all working in harmony and perfectly. It can happen for short periods, but usually something somewhere goes wrong. It has to periodically, frequently. That's normal and that's good. But your life situation always has this element of uncertainty, instability too, although you might not recognize that when you look at seemingly solid things. And your life is your experience of this moment, the only thing there ever is. There are some patterns in the mind that everybody inherits, that even for advanced presence practitioners like yourselves can still reassert themselves. Because they are so normal. By the way, my definition of normal is insane, as you probably know. And you may be able to catch yourself many times during the day when one of these normal patterns reasserts itself. And of course, one of the most prevalent patterns is reducing the present moment to a means to an end. It could be a simple thing like you get up in the morning and you're getting ready to go to work. What is the quality of your doing during that time of getting ready to go out? Or here, you got up this morning, getting ready to go to breakfast and then come here. How do you experience that time? Are you able to be present in what you're doing, or is the doing no more than a means to an end? And that's a huge difference, whether you fold your pajama and put it on your bed. Do you give it attention? Is it a pleasant thing to do? Do you acknowledge the being of this pajama and feel the texture and give it some loving attention, and then you put it away? Or is it, what's the next thing, and the next, and the next? Because if you're not, if this habit is always there, if the present moment is the stepping stone, and not much more than a stepping stone to the next moment, which is always a mental projection, because it never comes. The next moment never comes. Does it? No, I don't think it does, because when the next moment comes, it's the present moment. So the next moment doesn't come, it can never arrive. There's only this moment. But if your habit is to treat this moment most of the time as a means of getting to the next moment, so not being fully in it, but mentally being somewhere else, and then so the basic attitude is, I just need to get this moment out of the way. Then I will get to a better one. And that is a very deep-seated pattern that prevents you from being present. But it's only when I voice it like this that it becomes apparent to you, because otherwise you won't even see it, because it's so normal to live in such a way that unconsciously it's not, you don't tell yourself in your mind that I just need to get this moment out of the way because the next one will be better. That is an unspoken and unconscious assumption behind what you do. And it's not only, people also treat entire life periods in that way. Then it's not only, of course, most fundamentally the present moment, but they also treat entire chunks of their life in that way. For example, you're waiting for the weekend, so it's only 2 more days of having to go to work, and then there comes, or you're waiting for something else. Getting a better job, finding the person who is going to make me happy. It's only, in the meantime, I'm just ticking over, it's just I'm just waiting for, well, what's the expression? I'm waiting for the big break or whatever. I'm waiting for the big thing to happen, and finally I can start living. When that happens, in whatever form that takes, when that happens, then my life will really start. And that's another way, another manifestation of the same dysfunction, reducing an entire chunk of your life to a waiting room. And so for many people, almost their entire life, with very brief episodes that are often connected to falling below thinking, with brief episodes of a little bit of relief, they live in a waiting room, and this somehow, I don't know if anybody remembers, it's probably not popular anymore. There used to be a genre in theater that was called the theater of the absurd. Samuel Beckett and other authors. And often they showed, there was a famous play called Waiting for Godot, and there are two men waiting for this guy to arrive nobody knows who Godot is, but they spent the entire play, it's a theater play, the entire play they're waiting. Godot, who knows, some critics say, well, Godot, Godot, they're waiting for God, but it's not that. But the entire period is spent waiting. And I don't think Godot ever arrives. And they're similar, and this is just to show the absurdity of ultimately everyday life. So you have to be really vigilant to see whether either as concerning the present moment, reducing the present moment to a means to an end, and if you do that habitually, chances are that you also reduce huge chunks of your life to a means to an end or a waiting room. And of course, sometimes life does get better. Of course, it doesn't, if you are now living in unpleasant surroundings, perhaps it's noisy or it's too cold or too warm or cramped or whatever it is. You might have a job that's repetitive. You're waiting to get out of that. Feel lonely. One relationship has come to an end, another one hasn't started yet, I'm just waiting. And so you're hoping that things will get better, and sometimes they do get better, but the habit pattern is deeply ingrained, and even if the situation gets better, then you'll be waiting for something else. Because no situation can ever completely satisfy you. No person, no condition, no situation. Waiting for retirement. I can maybe take early retirement, and then what? Play golf, lie on the beach. And many people are very disappointed when they retire and don't know what to do with themselves. And they lose their sense of identity, it was always a false sense of identity because it is derived from their function. But at least they had a false sense of identity, and now they don't have any, and they don't know the possibilities of human life. So be vigilant. If you feel that an improvement is highly desirable in your life situation, that's okay. But it's much more likely to happen if you give more attention to the present moment rather than trying to get away from the present moment or denying it, always making it into a means to an end. If you give more your fullest attention to this moment, the so-called future is much more likely to improve the so-called future, because there is no future. When it comes, it's the present moment. A little strange paradox, different.
We've had human history for the past thousands of years. It's been dreadful suffering. We're going to transcend. This is a transcendence of human, but this is just a question of words. It doesn't matter. What matters is that there is the birth of something entirely new on the planet. And if you wanted to explain it in words, it is the disidentification of consciousness from form. That's the end of ego, because the identification of consciousness with form is ego. It is the dream of consciousness. So when a human awakens, it's not really a human awakening, it's consciousness awakening from the dream of form. So it is not only a shift then that happens to a human being, because ultimately there's no such thing as a human being. You just look like a human being or person. You are consciousness. So it is something much vaster that's awakening. When you think you are awakening, that's what it looks like, but there's something much vaster that is awakening, of which you are a part, and that is consciousness itself. So it is a cosmic event, and since it is happening on this planet here, it is reasonable to assume, and we can be virtually certain, that because everything is a microcosm, it's happening elsewhere in the universe. So it is an awakening of the universe into a different level, a completely different level of being, of consciousness. So that's how important your life is. And that's how something that may look mundane on the surface, you go every day, you go to the office, or you go to whatever you do in your job, and every day you go and you do what you do, and you talk to people, and you deal with things every day. It looks mundane on the surface, but if you realize what really matters is the consciousness you bring to it, then what looks mundane on the surface is not mundane at all in the depths of being, because all that surface stuff is really something, an opportunity for the arising of the new consciousness through you. And so that means also that the surface of your life, which means whatever you do, where you live, or who you live with, doesn't really matter that much. What matters is what you bring in, what flows into it, the consciousness that flows through you into it. That's what matters. So you don't have to be even that concerned about what exactly it is you do. And almost anywhere, you can be the opening for that. And if consciousness, this consciousness arises through you, and you find yourself in a situation that is totally unconducive to consciousness arising, you will very quickly find yourself taken out of that situation. Or you may find yourself walking out of that situation. In other words, they'll fire you, or you'll walk out. But the important thing is not to believe, okay, to bring consciousness I can't do it in my situation. I can't do it. Something needs to shift first out there before I can. No, that's not true. You start with where you are, here and now. And if it's not right for the arising of consciousness, then something will shift in the situation. It will change through because there's now a consciousness flowing into it, or you become removed. Life removes you. So, upset, again, let's go back to that term. Vigilant, it always tells you you've missed something there. You've forgotten something. And this is why the Course in Miracles has the wonderful line, I'm never upset for the reason I think. So there are many reasons why you think you're upset. He said that to me. He shouldn't have said that. He did that. He failed to do that. She did. Why can't they, these people, they never get it right. Why? I'm upset. What am I going to live on next month? What am I going to live on when I retire? My savings are shrinking. It's awful. Whatever upsets you. I'm never upset for the reason I think. And that's just something to understand deeply. There's always a reason out there why you think you're upset, but the true reason why you're upset is you're not present. You're not connected to the depths of your being. You're not there as consciousness. You're there as a little person. You're not rooted in consciousness by embodying the consciousness. You're a little person with its thoughts and reactions, and that's why you're upset. As long as you're trapped in the little personal sense of self, of course you're always upset. Soon, even if you're not permanently upset, very soon something will happen again that will make you upset. That's why life is so frustrating in the normal state of consciousness, and that's what the Buddha called dukkha, suffering. So he used that term. Upset is a modern term. Wherever you go, you'll be miserable, said the Buddha. Just wait. It won't be long before you're miserable again. I'm paraphrasing. It's my translation of the ancient sutra. Wherever you go, you'll be unhappy. And if you're not unhappy, no, just wait a little and you'll see. And he's describing a normal state of consciousness. But he's also showing the way beyond that. But it's wonderful to, first of all, see the truth of the first statement, that wherever you think salvation lies in externals, in some other person that you meet, some other situation that you go into, some other place where you go to live, it'll be fine for a while, and then something comes in that doesn't seem quite right. Or the very thing that made you happy turns around, and the very same thing makes you unhappy. Of course, as you know, the best example of this is marrying somebody. Because when you marry somebody at first, this person makes you happy. And then the Buddha said, just wait. Unless you transcend the merely personal, then it's not that your spouse will make you happy, no, but there is a deeper, if you want to even call it happiness, there's a deeper sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that arises from the depths of your being. And that's why then it's fine. It does mean, yes, your spouse still has his or her shortcomings, but they then exist within the the larger space of consciousness. So, again, keyword, vigilance, and then experience the miracle of the transformation of consciousness, which is your sense of self is no longer derived then from the personal level. Your history, your life situation, your relationships, your knowledge, your ideas, the things that people have done to you, your status in society, your possessions, which those things normally give you your sense of identity, and that changes completely.